Thank you. Good morning and welcome to Vince on a Monday. So good to see you here. So grateful for the best damn audience and media. This program brought to you by Blackout Coffee, the official coffee of all of us here at Silverlock. Go to blackoutcoffee.com/Vince. Use the code Vince, that's VINCE, and you're going to get 20% off your first order. That's right. Hey, coming up on the program today, you and I have a lot to talk about. We've got July 4th we just went through. The big, beautiful bill is now officially a big, beautiful law. We had devastating flooding in Texas, the left trying to leap all over the deaths of children to say that President Trump is guilty of something here. It's utterly disgraceful trying to get into the details there. But the big breaking news this morning, overnight, is the release of a 1.5-page memo by the United States Department of Justice related to Jeffrey Epstein and what answers you and I will be getting, if any, going into the future. I break down everything that we're seeing right now and how I'm feeling about it. It's all ahead on this edition of Vince. As always, so great to have you with us as we navigate everything going on in the world. I want to thank our sponsors for making all of this possible. You know, it's difficult for this administration to take all of our personal finances into account when trying to do what's right for the country. You've got to do that. And that's why tens of thousands of Americans are buying gold right now from Birch Gold. Here are the facts. In the past 12 months, the value of gold has increased by as much as 40%. And many central banks continue to bolster demand for gold by buying it in record quantities. Global instability and tension could be the highest it's been in decades. But you can find peace of mind in gold. Birch Gold makes it extremely easy to convert an existing IRA or a 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold, or you can just buy some to store at home. Just text my name, Vince. Vince, that's right, to 989898, and Birch Gold will send you a free info kit on gold. There's no obligation, only useful information with an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers. It's time for you to take control of your savings today. Text the word Vince to 989898. Data and message rates apply. Yep, it is so good, as always, to have you with us today. And overnight, we get a massive claim, a piece from Axios. Exclusive DOJ, FBI conclude Epstein had no client list, died by suicide. Had no client list, died by suicide. And then the piece goes on to describe a 2-page memo that the United States Department of Justice with the FBI just released. And rather than take you through the Axios interpretation of events and what this all means, how about we just go right to the memo? Why don't we just look at the 1.5-page memo together, and then we'll break it down. What exactly is inside of this thing? And here's what we're seeing, okay? Here's what we're seeing. And again, I'll tell you right up front that I have all sorts of unresolved questions here that I'm going to go over with you that I think are entirely legitimate to have. But in the spirit of getting receipts, I'm going to keep asking for them. So here's where we are from the top. The United States, look at the letterhead. It says the United States Department of Justice, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Both of them indicated in this. They say, as part of our commitment to transparency, the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation have conducted an exhaustive review of investigative holdings related to Jeffrey Epstein. To ensure that the review was thorough, the FBI conducted digital searches of its databases, hard drives, and network drives. Got that? As well as physical searches of squad areas, locked cabinets, desks, closets, and other areas where responsive material may have been stored. All right, let's begin with that sentence. This memo that we're reading is based on the data that the FBI actually has in its possession right now. Now, let me ask you a really basic question. If you are of the opinion that a cover-up was at any point involved in the saga of Jeffrey Epstein, what kind of cover-up wouldn't destroy relevant evidence that demonstrates a broader conspiracy? You know what I'm saying? So, in other words, that the guys who are running the FBI right now, that's Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, they only have what the FBI currently has in its possession to go off of. And so they said they conducted all these digital searches of everything. And that's where this memo emanates from. They said these searches uncovered a significant amount of material, including more than 300 gigabytes of data and physical evidence. The files relating to Epstein include a large volume of images of Epstein, images and videos of victims who are either minors or appear to be minors, and over 10,000 downloaded videos and images of illegal child sexual abuse material and other pornography. Now, I assume when I see that line that this is not just pornography or sex abuse material that Epstein himself just generated. My assumption is, just like any of these child sexual perverts, he probably had a lot of child pornography from other sources. That's my guess based on that line. Teams of agents, analysts, attorneys, and privacy and civil liberties experts comb through the digital and documentary evidence with the aim of providing as much information as possible to the public while simultaneously protecting victims. Much of the material is subject to court-ordered sealing. Only a fraction of this material would have been aired publicly had Epstein gone to trial, as the seal only served to protect victims and did not expose any additional third parties to allegations of illegal wrongdoing. Well, that's interesting. No third parties were implicated? Here's a really basic question for you, and it's going to come up again as we go through the document. As we go through this document. The reality here is only one other person has been prosecuted for all of this. Epstein himself was prosecuted for sex trafficking. Epstein himself was prosecuted for sex trafficking. And in fact, I went through this morning, I was going through the old indictments to prepare for this. And here's what the indictment said about Epstein being charged with sex trafficking. They said that it was about him. The indictment unsealed alleged that Epstein sexually exploited and abused dozens of underage girls by enticing them to engage in sex acts with him in exchange for money. So the sex trafficking charges that were placed against Jeffrey Epstein were not, according to the indictment, they didn't mention other men. They specifically said that sex trafficking was done to Epstein. Additionally, Ghislaine Maxwell's indictment, and remember, she's serving 20 years in prison right now. Her indictment was for transporting these girls to have sex with him and in part with her. I guess she was involved in some of the sexual exploitation, according to the indictment, the conviction. But just to remind you of the details about those prosecutions, oftentimes what's come up, and legitimately so, you and I will bring this up, which is, well, how can you sex traffic somebody and then you're not sex trafficking them to anybody? How does that work? Exactly. These indictments specifically were about these girls being sexually exploited for Epstein's gratification at a number of locations, places like New York City, Palm Beach, Florida. So that's what's in the indictments, just to remind you of exactly. First Dodge Girl asked the question that everybody's asking: who was he trafficking to? Himself. That's what the indictment said. That's what the Epstein indictment said, that the trafficking was to himself. Now, that's not what the victims say. That's not what the victims say. Virginia Giuffre, the former Virginia Roberts, the deceased Virginia Giuffre, she was saying up until the very end of her life that there were all sorts of men who were involved here, that it wasn't just Jeffrey Epstein. She had implicated Prince Andrew in all of this. And clearly the royal family in the UK, the Queen, took it seriously enough that she demoted him. She took away his royal duties. Prince Andrew reached a settlement with Virginia Giuffre over all of this. It strikes me that that's not the behavior of an innocent person or a family, a royal family that thought he was innocent. Something deeply wrong was going on in the midst of all of this. and that there were clearly powerful men who were the demented beneficiaries of this type of cruelty to these young girls. I don't think there's any question about that whatsoever. Which brings us back to today's memo on the subject. They say that throughout this review, only a fraction of this material would have even been aired at the Epstein trial, they say. It didn't expose any additional third parties to allegations of illegal wrongdoing. Throughout this review, we found no basis to revisit the disclosure of those materials, and we will not permit the release of child porn. Of course not. They should not release child porn. We all agree on that. This systematic review revealed no incriminating client list, they said. Now, this is, again, I just want you to read this the same way I'm reading it. This systematic review revealed no incriminating client list. Okay, so is the contention that Epstein had some sort of handwritten client list? Here's the list. This is all the people who are sexually exploiting these girls. Or would all of this information be found all over the place, not in some handy leather-bound list? That seems very likely. So I feel like there's some word games being played here. There was also no credible evidence found that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals as a part of his actions. We did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties. Okay. Here's another piece that's driving me nuts about this statement. We did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties. Now, obviously, look, there's two agencies that are involved here. One is the Federal Bureau of Investigation. One is the United States Department of Justice. The FBI investigates crimes or possible crimes, what they suspect are crimes. It's the United States Department of Justice, led by Pam Bondi, that makes prosecution decisions here. And what the DOJ is telling us this morning is we haven't found any evidence that would lead to charging anybody else. I'm sorry, what? What does that mean exactly? Because what we're describing is a sex trafficking operation. Even if Jeffrey Epstein was the only person who was sleeping with these girls, abusing these children, let me be more specific. Even if he was the only one who was doing that, we know already that he wasn't. But let's just assume that he was. There was still an operation in place to make that happen. There's only been one person who's been prosecuted for that, other than Epstein. It was Ghislaine Maxwell. She was the only person who was prosecuted. She was convicted. Now she's serving 20 years in prison. But Ghislaine Maxwell wasn't the only person involved. There were all sorts of human beings that knew about this, that were aiding and abetting it. Clearly, there are pilots who are flying these girls to and from these locations. There are drivers who have moved these girls to and from these locations. There's got to be household staff. There's got to be assistants. There's got to be all sorts of people who were involved in the abuse of these girls. Either that, or they're the single dumbest human beings to ever be employed anywhere, who had no idea this was going on. Come on. So the idea that there's no evidence to support prosecution of anybody else, it boggles the mind. It's just not even possible, is it? Now, if you want to say, if you're the United States Department of Justice, and you want to tell me that, hey, this is outside the statute of limitations, we have evidence of wrongdoing, but we can't go after these people because the statute has run, well, then say that. That's not what this letter says, just to be crystal clear. And so I want to just raise this point this morning and say, I fault the Attorney General of the United States for not giving us all of the clarity that we deserve on this subject. If you want to be transparent, and this letter indicates right up front that they want to be, then be transparent about this. But to say that there's nobody else who did anything wrong that you could possibly charge here, it's not even possible. And you and I know that's the case. Additionally, they say in this letter, consistent with prior disclosures, this review confirmed that Epstein harmed over 1,000 victims. 1,000. Now, that's a big number. That's bigger than the hundreds that Pam Bondi was talking about earlier this year. It's now reached over 1,000 victims here. I'd like to know more about what that even means. Is that 1,000 girls that were sexually exploited? Each suffered unique trauma, the letter says. Sensitive information relating to these victims is intertwined throughout the materials. This includes specific details such as victim names, likenesses, physical descriptions, places of birth, associates, and employment history. One of our highest priorities is combating child exploitation and bringing justice to victims. Perpetuating unfounded theories about Epstein serves neither of those ends. Well, sure. Look, if whatever we deal in, it has to be grounded in reality, obviously. You can try to advance whatever far-fetched theory you want, but if it's not supported by any evidence whatsoever, it's legitimate to say, like, hey, be careful about getting over your skis and misleading people about where all of this is going. But my questions are just foundational. I just have very basic questions about this. How come no one else has been held accountable for this? Here's a really basic question. How the hell did Jeffrey Epstein become so stinking rich? How did, by the end of his life, did he become worth over $500 million? Has anyone ever given you actual clarity on the answer to that question? He was working at some elite school teaching kids, and then he got fired from there. And then he was working at Bear Stearns, and then he was working with Les Wexner and like these super rich people who were just all of a sudden paying him unbelievable amounts of money to be their money managers. How does that sequence of events play out exactly? That has been wrapped in all sorts of mystery forever. Forever. So getting to the bottom of those questions, that seems really relevant. And I don't think that they're a source of unfounded conspiracy theories. I think that they're legitimate questions that deserve real answers. The memo continues. They say, to that end, while we have labored to provide the public with maximum information regarding Epstein and ensured examination of any evidence in the government's possession, it is the determination of the United States Department of Justice and the FBI that no further disclosure would be appropriate or warranted. Well, it would be if you found out something new, for sure, including, was there a corrupt effort to destroy information within the government's possession? That seems like the kind of disclosure that would be warranted if you establish evidence for that. After a thorough investigation, the memo continues, FBI investigators concluded that Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide in his cell at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York City. That's on August 10th of 2019. This conclusion is consistent with previous findings, they say, including a 2019 autopsy by the New York City Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, the November 2019 position of the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, and the June 2023 conclusions of the Office of the Inspector General. The conclusion that Epstein died by suicide is further supported by video footage from the common area of the special housing unit where Epstein was housed at the time of his death. As the DOJ's Inspector General explained in 2023, anyone entering or attempting to enter the tier where Epstein's cell was located from the special housing unit common area would have been captured by this footage. The FBI's independent review of this footage confirmed that from the time Epstein was locked in his cell at around 10:40 p.m. on August 9th until around 6:30 a.m. the next morning, nobody entered any of the tiers in the SHU. And then they released the video here. The video's been released. Okay? So let me show you the video here that they're talking about. For those of you who are watching on rumble.com/Vince, if you're listening to the audio podcast, it might behoove you to go check out the video edition of our program today so you can see what I'm talking about. But this is the video footage. And I just some basics before I get into it. One, again, the video itself starts on 10:40 p.m. on August 9th, the night that Epstein died in his cell. And it runs until 6:30 the next morning. Now, importantly, Epstein's body is discovered minutes after this, according to the official record. And then one would presume then taken out of the cell. That video is not a part of this. And I wish that the Department of Justice had released the video of Epstein's body being carried out of the room. At least give us that portion of it. That is not in this video. There's also some misunderstanding about the angle of this video. Because as you remember, what was the original story on all of this? That the cameras were off outside the cell specifically. The cameras were not working. The guards fell asleep. The guards falsified the records of doing their rounds that night where they were supposed to check the cells. And all of these events happened in the same time frame, at the same moment, very conveniently. And then you get this. Then you get Epstein's dead, and that's the end of it. Epstein's dead, and that's the end of it. Okay. So in a moment, I'm going to show you this video. I'll take you through it and tell you where that camera actually is. And again, there's a lot of misunderstanding going around the internet right now. I'm going to clear it all up for you. We're going to do that in just a moment. First, I have to thank our sponsors. Hillsdale is wonderful. Do you ever just want to turn off the news and ignore politics? Yeah, it can be overwhelming. But here's the thing. We're citizens of a republic. That's important. The decisions made by our government affect our everyday lives. In order to be a good citizen, you have to be informed. You have to read and understand the United States Constitution. And that's why I'm so excited that Hillsdale College is offering a brand new free online course called The Federalist. Yeah, the Federalist Papers were written primarily by two of America's most important founding fathers, Alexander Hamilton and James Madison. Together, they explain how the United States Constitution established a government strong enough to secure the rights of citizens and safe enough to wield that power. Hillsdale's online courses on the Federalist include 10 lectures, each about 30 minutes long. You can take the course at your own pace. There's no cost to sign up. Plus, Hillsdale offers more than 40 other free online courses. That's right. In fact, Hillsdale, the Federalist series, it just got launched, and it's beautiful. I have to tell you, this thing is absolutely gorgeous, and it takes you through step by step why the Federalist Papers came to be, what we are. We're a republic. We're not a direct democracy, and why our founders were so obsessed with that distinction, and how important it is that we have an informed public in order to maintain and keep this republic alive. It's wonderful. Anyway, thank you to Hillsdale for putting this together. It is really, really good. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/Vince to enroll. There's no cost. It's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/Vince. You can enroll right now for free. Hillsdale.edu/Vince and dive in. Okay. So I was telling you about the video footage. And so let me just begin by showing you, for those of you watching the video version of this program, what it looks like. It is about 11 hours of footage, that goes through the night. And if I just click play on this, what you'll see is just there's some people moving in a common area down here in the jail cell space. This door we're staring at, door 46, people think, I think there's a lot of people on the internet right now who are of the opinion that this is the door behind which is Jeffrey Epstein's jail cell. That is not the case. Door 46 is irrelevant. This is just what you're staring at is the working camera that is giving us some perspective into the common space of the special housing unit of this Manhattan Correctional Center controlled by the FBI, controlled by the United States Department of Justice. This is the video, by the way, that Dan Bongino had said some weeks ago would be released, that the FBI and the DOJ were working on getting this thing cleaned up for release. And they definitely have released it, no question. 11 hours of footage here. But again, it stops just shy of us being able to see whatever commotion obviously would have ensued after finding a dead body inside of a jail cell, including whether or not they carried that body through the common area. Now, let me show you the perspective on a map as well, where all of this is. This is the Inspector General's report from the United States Department of Justice on the death of Jeffrey Epstein. Look closely here. That circled camera is the only functioning camera that was in the wing, in the special housing unit. And if you look closely here at this map, that camera's over here. You see that? Gee, could we zoom in on the map here just to get, we'll come back to this wider shot in a moment, but I want to zoom in on the map so people can understand this. This is the camera angle we have. This is door 46 right here. This is door 46. In other words, this door is going to be of no use to us in terms of where Epstein was, because Epstein is over here. This is Epstein's jail cell. So now if we can pull back to the wider shot now, I want to show you why this camera angle is so crappy in terms of giving us a good perspective on it. Here's the layout of the rest of that special housing unit. The only functioning camera that was recording anything was the one that you and I are looking at just a moment ago. The rest of the cameras were not recording anything. This camera in the G tier, recording nothing. This camera in the J tier, recording nothing. This camera in the L tier, where Jeffrey Epstein was held, recording nothing. So the video that we get to see this morning that just basically lets you stare down a stairwell into a partial view of a common area, candidly, offers us almost nothing about this story. Very, very limited information. The point that the Justice Department seems to be making with this video, as Dan himself said out loud, is to give us a perspective on, yeah, there was no traffic into the wing, the L tier that was holding Jeffrey Epstein. So there was like basically nobody going in and out during that time frame. But I still wonder who the hell was in there. Was it just Jeffrey Epstein? How did he break 3 bones in his neck? How unusual is that for someone to die by suicidal hanging? It's very unusual, according to the medical examiners who've looked at it. So again, here's what I'll tell you about all of this. A couple things, because you're probably wondering. I imagine people are. Obviously, I'm sitting here doing a program on to an audience that was very much built by Dan Bongino. He built a great, amazing audience, which I adore, and I'm grateful for you. And I'm very happy about that. And I love Dan. And in fact, one of the reasons I have been so encouraged by Dan being in that role is because, look, let's be honest, out of all the human beings on planet Earth who could possibly have that job, Dan's the guy I would want in there because he's a man who operates on maximum integrity. And so I'm grateful for the effort that they are undertaking in order to correct all of the problems that exist in our country, especially with criminality. And by the way, this is an expression right now, what we're seeing, of them trying to get us information. But it does create all sorts of questions. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend I don't have them. I've got a million questions. I want to know how Jeffrey Epstein got so rich. I want to know who he was connected to. I want to know who was abusing these girls above and beyond Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. I want to know why it's only Ghislaine Maxwell who's serving jail time and not any of the other accessories that were involved in hurting these children. And none of those things are conspiracy theories. Those are all completely grounded in cold, hard truth. And I know that that you share my view on this. I know it because the whole internet's all up in arms about this, and rightfully so, because you just want crystal clear answers. Now, is the FBI going after child predators? Well, you are damn well right they are. I just want to remind you of some of the big victories for the FBI as it relates to going after child predators. It's not like these guys are getting away with hurting children. They're going after these people. Operation Restore Justice. This was just released in May. The FBI arrested 205 alleged child sex abuse offenders in just a 5-day nationwide crackdown. 205. A lot of people. It was an unprecedented nationwide operation, the FBI said, to protect our children and mark April's National Child Abuse Prevention Month. The FBI announced it. It was called Operation Restore Justice. It was a 5-day sweeping FBI initiative to identify, track, and arrest child sex predators across the country in coordination with all 55 of their FBI field offices. So they got a lot of people rounded up, a lot of them. Disgraceful human beings like Eric Antonio Contreras of Hayward, California, who was arrested on April 30th, possessed child sex abuse materials. He had allegedly expressed a desire to engage in sexual conduct with a 12-year-old girl. And after the execution of a search warrant of October of 2023, law enforcement recovered over 1,000 media files consistent with child sex abuse materials on his electronic devices. And he wasn't alone. They got hundreds of these people. And it's also not the only operation to catch these child predators. There was also this one. 109 children were rescued and 244 child abusers were arrested in an Operation Soteria Shield this year, exposing widespread child exploitation in North Texas. Authorities calling it a successful roundup of child sex offenders, and it also showed how widespread the crime is in North Texas. This is a CBS report on the subject. The Dallas FBI office and some of the 70 law enforcement agencies that participated announced the results of Operation Soteria Shield on Tuesday. This just came out recently. 244 men and women were charged with exploiting children for the purpose of sex trafficking or pornography. So there is definitely no shortage of effort within the Kash Patel, Dan Bongino-led FBI to go after child sexual predators. Hundreds of them are being rounded up. And in fact, one other big thing that I want to get to with you this morning as it relates to the FBI and the mission that those guys are on specifically. Dan and Kash have fired a lot of people in the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And in fact, this decision to fire everybody has become a gigantic, ridiculous New York Times hit piece this weekend that Dan was responding to. The New York Times has an editorial board piece up this week. Trump's politicized FBI has made Americans less safe, they claim. And then they put up some stupid graphic that they made to show that the FBI is collapsing and on and on and on. And what they start to go down is a series of this guy's been fired, that guy's been fired. Everybody keeps getting fired. And the concept, the basic concept of the New York Times piece is that that's a sign that Trump is politicizing the FBI. Now, you and I both know that that's ridiculous. Donald Trump was the victim of a politicized FBI. American patriots were victims of a politicized FBI. You got people like Mark Houck, just a great Christian father who's being attacked by FBI SWAT teams showing up to his house to place him under arrest for literally defending his son from a lunatic outside of an abortion mill. And this story just keeps going. All the Christians who were attacked, traditional Latin mass, people singing church hymns outside of these abortion mills. You get January 6 people who have had their lives upended, destroyed, many of whom have been driven to suicide. It's just been absolutely disgusting how weaponized that FBI has been. So mission one for the guys who are there is to depoliticize it. So that's what they're doing right now. And that includes going after people who are who are straight up connected to the people who did the worst things. There's a story that I want to bring to you. This is a guy. Yeah, I know. I do. I know. I have my guest standing by. I'll get to him in just a moment. But I've got this story about this fellow called Michael Feinberg. He just wrote an op-ed bitching about the fact that he was driven out of the FBI by Dan Bongino. Feinberg, I want to just be really clear about who the hell he is. He was maintaining a personal friendship with Peter Strzok. He claims the only reason that he's been forced out is that he had a relationship with Peter Strzok, who, by the way, was a complete lunatic who abused his power. He hates Trump supporters. He hates Donald Trump. He was coordinating with Lisa Page to try and stop Trump. It's all crystal clear in the text messages that the two were firing off to each other. This Feinberg guy, he quit the FBI before they could polygraph him. They suspect him of something. They wanted to polygraph him, and he resigned his post before they could do that. That's the actual story. He's like running around telling this sob story. Oh, they forced me out. They got rid of me. It was so mean, and now it's being politicized. Bullshit. This guy ran before they could polygraph him. And now he has a social media account on Blue Sky where he complains all the time about the FBI. Blue Sky? You want to okay, so if the goal was to try and convince us that you're some sort of nonpartisan actor, you're not doing it by skipping the polygraph and then going to Blue Sky to launch a Twitter account, or a Blue Sky account rather, about how much you hate Kash Patel and Dan Bongino and how they're actually politicizing the FBI. It's all so crazy, actually. Yeah, but there's that. All right, I've got a lot to get to here. Coming up in just a moment, we got a great guest joining us. Ryan Girdusky is going to be here. I've got to talk to him just about everything that's going on. He's a great writer, journalist. He'll be with us in just a moment. Hey, you guys know that I love Blackout Coffee. Every day I start with Blackout Coffee, every single day. It's wonderful. Blackout Coffee is a great sponsor of this program. John is the owner. He is a great, great American patriot, and he built Blackout Coffee from the ground up. They don't compromise on quality or values. This is America First coffee, roasted fresh right here in the United States. There's no woke nonsense, just bold, strong coffee for people who actually get stuff done. And as you know, Blackout Coffee has been the official coffee of everybody here at Silverlock. So you already know this is a brand that stands for the right values. And it's delicious. I'm telling you, it is a delicious cup of coffee. If you've been looking for a delicious cup of coffee, go with Blackout. It's going to change your life. Here's the deal. John is hooking you up. You can head over to blackoutcoffee.com/Vince. Use the code Vince. That's VINCE and get 20% off your first order. Whether you like whole bean ground or even instant coffee that doesn't suck, Blackout Coffee has you covered. Support a company that actually shares your values. Blackoutcoffee.com/Vince. Use the code Vince and you're going to get 20% off your first order. Yes, indeed. Blackout Coffee. And Bone Charge is the infrared sauna blanket and the red light face mask. These are great products. We love them in our house. I love the infrared sauna blanket. It's really cool because I've got a sauna in the house now. You just wrap yourself up in that infrared heat and let it work its magic. It's a total game changer. It's created a real difference for me in how I relax and rejuvenate, how I feel. pretty cool. And my wife loves the red light face mask. She uses this thing every evening, puts it on, and it's great at helping improve your skin's texture and reducing inflammation. It creates fantastic results. It's like having a mini spa treatment right in the house. Now, if you're thinking about trying these out, you're in luck. Just head to bonecharge.com. Use the code Vince at checkout to get 15% off. Both of these products have made a positive impact on helping my wellness routine. I'm sure you're going to love them too. Use the code Vince at bonecharge.com to save 15%. These statements and products have not been evaluated by the FDA. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease or condition. That's right. Okay. Joining us right now, Ryan Girdusky is in the house. He's a great journalist, great writer, conservative activist, and all-around good dude. Ryan, it's great to see you today, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so we got the big, beautiful bill signed into law this past week. What'd you make of that? It's a pretty big deal. This thing finally got across the finish line.
I think that there was a lot I didn't like in it, but at the end of the day, funding ICE to have mass deportations was the most important thing. So as long as that got done, and as long as the AI portion of the bill got scrapped, which it did, then I was fine with everything else. I didn't really care about all the other details. Funding ICE to the level that we are will actually allow for mass deportation and to undo Joe Biden's invasion of this country. And that's really all my priorities were about.
For sure. And so the president was able to sign that thing on Friday, on Independence Day. Of course, fellas, if you could put up the video footage of the slow-mo of the White House flyover. Look at this cut one, where you get the jets, the B-2 stealth bomber, the F-22s, the F-35s flying over. Look how awesome that is. That's incredible. And that's the most Trumpy thing I've ever seen. That, only President Trump, for some reason, thinks we're deserving of cool flyovers like this. But we get that as the big, beautiful bill becomes law. Ryan, I also want to talk to you about, the president gave remarks at the Iowa State Fairgrounds just ahead of passage here on Thursday night. He talked about this. And he was great. He was celebrating the legislation. He was celebrating the country. But he did say at one point, he kind of tipped his hand that there is an effort to try and protect illegal immigrant farm workers and illegal immigrant hotel workers who, again, are in the country illegally right now. And it seems like he's kind of gone back and forth about the way he's talked about this issue. Give us some insight in terms of what you make of it and what you're hearing.
Yeah, so I've spoken to a couple people in and close to the administration. There's been a big effort on the part of the likes of Brooke Rollins and allegedly Kristi Noem, according to Trump in the speech, said that Kristi Noem was very much in favor of protecting illegal labor. And there's been outside voices.
Brooke, so people know, Brooke's the ag secretary. And
Brooke is the ag secretary. She
DHS.
was in the first Trump White House. She was there because of her close association with Jared Kushner. She has been a long advocate for amnesty for illegal aliens. She has supported it going back to 2010 in written word, where she has written about why we should have an amnesty for illegal aliens. And she's considered part of the Jared coalition of, I guess, the Trump White House. Even though he's not there, she still is. That is, concerning. But there's also been outside voices. I heard from someone recently that not only did Ivanka Trump sit there and say something, but Joe Rogan, both on his podcast and in, I guess, private conversation, have sat there and said that this is wrong to sit there and go after construction workers and agricultural workers.
Stand by. Hey, I'm not hearing Ryan here. I want to make sure I can hear Ryan. His voice just fell out there. Ryan,
can you hear me?
No, it's okay.
Can you hear me?
Hey, so Guy, let's get that. We'll try and get that corrected. For some reason, not hearing Ryan's voice right now.
No.
And this may be one of these. Oh, there we go. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me? I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I hear you now, Ryan. I'm sorry. Go ahead. You were saying that Joe Rogan may have had some influence here.
Yeah, Joe Rogan was both on his podcast saying that it was wrong to sit there and have ICE raids at construction sites and in farms, and that information leaked to the president. And he apparently someone was having conversations with Joe Rogan about why we should prevent raids from going on in construction sites and farm labor. I got this from a very, very good source within the administration that this was that Rogan apparently had an outsized influence in this decision making. Now, two things. One, I spoke to several congressmen about this, and Republican congressmen, and they said they will outright not vote for any type of bill, because Trump said there's going to be legislation, any bill that would support protecting illegal labor. Secondly, we have currently, I mean, there's always stories in the news about rotting fruit in the fields. We always have this rotting fruit in the fields if we don't get an amnesty or endless supply of illegal labor to farmers. We currently have an agricultural visa that supplies
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands of farm workers to farmers in this country. The thing is, if you go through the visa process or the legal process, farmers have to provide both housing and transportation for the farm labor and some level of medical safety, some levels of work standards and safety. If you go through the illegal, there's no reason, there's no protection for the laborers, and so who assumes the bills for the illegal aliens? It's many times it's the taxpayers. The taxpayers go and have to pay for them when they go to emergency rooms. Taxpayers have to pay for them through public transportation if there is any, if they're
Right.
commuting
Right.
from a small town. Taxpayers will have to sit there and accumulate a lot of the bills that would otherwise go to farmers. So farmers have an incentive to sit there and reward illegal labor. At this point, what the Trump administration should be doing is asking farmers to automate the business as much as possible. That's what every other developed country is doing, is automating their agricultural workers. And we, for some reason, are depending on cheap labor from South America.
Yeah, and also it's fundamentally unfair. I don't know why should certain categories or certain industries be allowed to break the law? I mean, everyone should just be following it. So if I've been saying this from the very beginning, we have, as you just mentioned, a legal guest worker program. And if you truly can't find American citizens to do those jobs, we have a federal government program that you can rely on. But as you point out, that comes with stipulations like you actually have to pay people responsible wages. You have to provide housing for them. You've got to pay in order to make that work. And there are American farms, to their great credit. I've seen the Merriweather Farms account talking about this a lot, that those guys have American employees. They work really hard to make sure that everyone who works for them is here legally. And they resent this idea that other farms, especially big ag farms, can get away with exploiting illegal labor at the expense of small American run farms.
Right. And Brooke Rollins was doing an interview with Breitbart News maybe a month ago, and she complained that the agricultural visa pays farm workers too much money. They pay them $20 to $30 an hour, and it's just too much money for many farmers, so they have to go to illegal labor. That's not that much money, really. And if that is too much still, then there should be some kind of tax credit or something to automate those jobs. There is a robot to basically pick any kind of fruit, any kind of vegetable, harvest any kind
Right.
of wheat or dairy that there is. And we wouldn't, and there's no problem then if that's too much money. They don't want to do that. Farmers do not want to sit there and have that expense, but it is necessary. Japan does not import hundreds of thousands of South Americans every year to pick rice paddies. They have robots. It is time that farmers are expected to get to the 21st century technology and the 21st century economy and stop depending on cheap labor. They demand be cheaper all the time. One last thing, when there were raids on meat processing plants, not only did Americans take those jobs, but they got raises upon taking those jobs. So it is possible to sit there and make it profitable and hire only Americans to do those jobs. And which jobs you can't hire Americans, you can either go through the legal visa system or automate those jobs.
Yeah. It just strikes me that like there's all sorts of ways to get this under control, and workplace enforcement is an obvious one. All of the immigration experts and guests that we've had, to include people like the border czar Tom Homan and the head of ICE Todd Lyons. I've asked repeatedly about workplace enforcement. These guys say not only is it going on, but that they're going to be ramping it up. And God willing, they do, Ryan Gerdusky, because the more we have workplace enforcement, the less we're going to have to worry about chasing down illegal immigrants to begin with, because we just have to cut off the magnets that draw people to invade the country in the first place.
It's been done before, not only in our own country, but in other countries. It's not rocket science. And to have self deportation, right? The best way to avoid having to deport illegal aliens and spending all the money is one, them not coming here to begin with. The second is to have self deportation. Stop rewarding illegal behavior. Stop giving them access to welfare and Medicaid and all the rest of it. Stop allowing them to have in-state tuition for colleges, or access to jobs, or stop not taxing the remittances they send to other countries. Those are very easy things the federal government can do before we have to go looking for them, either in rural communities or urban communities, or somewhere in between. That is the easiest, number one easiest thing to do. And every time you sit there and say, anyone, the president, a part of the administration, a member of Congress, member of the Senate, says we're going to figure out a carve out for this group or that group, cartel members and human smugglers immediately go tell the populations it's okay to come now. They're going to not enforce it. They understand the laws and the communications that members of Congress and the White House sends better than anybody else. And they prey on well-intentioned but very poor people to sit there and use that as a method to get to the United States.
Yeah, I'm just for supporting Americans and not exploiting people by importing them into the country and taking advantage of them. I think every American's for this basic principle. And one of the great things I like about the right is that we're willing to engage in honest debates about what makes the country better. And Ryan, thank you always for contributing to that. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. This. Thank you.
Good to talk to you today. It's Ryan Gerdusky with a sharp take on all of this. It's a very simple thing. You come in illegally, you should face the consequences of being deported. And if we need people to come into the country in any capacity to assist us in making this country great and productive, then we have to do it through legal means. That's the most basic thing imaginable. And we should do things the right way. So hopefully the White House hears this message, hears this conversation, and considers it. Because the cool thing about this White House is they do pay attention to what you have to say on this subject. Okay. Speaking of immigration enforcement, a couple quick things I need to hit. I've got a lot. We've got the flooding in Texas I still want to talk about. The left is just being so callous with all of this, and really, really disgusting. But while we were talking with Ryan just now, live this morning in the 10 o'clock hour Eastern time, we just got breaking news out of Bill Malugin of the Fox News Channel. He writes on X that 3 federal and Texas law enforcement sources are telling him that an active shooter with a rifle and tactical gear ambushed Border Patrol agents as they arrived at a Border Patrol annex facility in McAllen, Texas this morning. Local police and federal agents returned fire, killing him. Bill says he was told this was a purposeful ambush and attack against federal agents. And there's going to be a press conference on this subject later this morning, Monday morning. No federal agents are injured. A McAllen police officer may have been shot, but is in stable condition. So a shooting directed at a Border Patrol facility, a purposeful ambush attack against federal agents. This is not the only one, okay? So we get this report this morning from McAllen, but I also want to share with you that we have other reports like this over the weekend. Here we go. Here is cut 2. Take a look at this. Portland, Oregon, a left-wing mob tried to storm an immigration and customs enforcement facility in Portland. Look at this. Post-millennial with the footage here. There's absolute chaos in the streets of Portland once again. This is typical Seattle, Portland, Los Angeles, these left-wing cities where lefties are inspired to attack immigration and customs enforcement officials and officers by Democrats who constantly say that the guys who are doing the job of protecting our country, getting the invaders out, they're saying that they're the equivalent of the Gestapo, that they're Nazis. So we had an attack in Portland this weekend. Again, that's not the only one as well. There was another armed mob that opened fire on a cop outside of a Texas ICE facility this weekend. Multiple suspects were placed into custody. A Texas police officer was shot in the neck late Thursday night. This would be going into Independence Day during an apparent coordinated attack outside of an ICE detention center, according to authorities. Just before 11 p.m. on Thursday, officers from the Alvarado Police Department responded to reports of a suspicious person near the Prairieland ICE detention facility in Alvarado, Texas, according to CBS. Upon arrival, officers encountered what appeared to be an armed individual, and when one officer attempted to engage, several suspects, a mob of people, allegedly opened fire and struck the officer in the neck, the police say. So this is now, over the course of just the last few days, what have I been saying on this subject? That the left is going to get an ICE officer killed. And it looks like right now that also includes anybody else who's assisting ICE, local police, United States Marines. You have these Department of Homeland Security personnel who are all on the front lines trying to bring these illegals into custody, and lefties are leading attacks on them. Lefties are leading attacks on them. And just in the last few days, since Thursday night, we've seen 3 really dramatic ambushes and attacks, including, as we speak this morning, out of McAllen, Texas. We'll keep our eyes on any developments that come out of that and bring you updates again as we get them. But this is as disgraceful as it can possibly get. Disgraceful. Speaking of disgraceful, the left's reaction to the flooding in Texas this weekend, let me see if I can pull up the latest on this subject, has been absolutely awful. The death toll in Central Texas from the flash floods going into July 4th has now risen to 82 people dead. And a local sheriff says that 10 of the campers who we've all been tracking this weekend remain missing. Families have been sifting through the waterlogged debris on Sunday, the Associated Press reports, and stepped inside of empty cabins at Camp Mystic, an all-girls summer camp, ripped apart by flash floods that washed homes off of their foundations and killed at least 82 people in Central Texas. Rescuers have been navigating very challenging terrain, they say, looking for survivors in all of this. They say that they have found the bodies of some 28 children. 28 children. Remember, this county, Kerr County, and as you're watching the video podcast right now, you can see how quickly the water levels rose over the course of just about 45 minutes. Shocking how quickly this water level just went absolutely crazy and how quickly it came upon everybody. 28 children's bodies have been found so far, and the death toll is only rising. The missing continue to be the pressing concern here. We did see some reports that at least 2 children were found alive clinging to a tree, which is good news that they were able to be found and rescued. We also saw stories of a father who had was inside of a mobile home with his family, and as the water was pouring into their mobile home, tried to basically create some space for the water to escape so they could continue to breathe. He punched a hole in the glass window of the room that they were contained in. When he did, he severed a massive part of his arm, cutting into his artery, and he bled out in that room, passing away in his attempt to save his family. Just absolutely brutal. Not something to be politicized, not something to be exploited to try and hurt President Trump because you don't like him, but that's what the left has been doing this weekend. It's just been both predictable and awful. You know, I say this all the time. It's not shocking, but it is appalling. For example, here's George Stephanopoulos this weekend, cut 6, mindlessly repeating a lie that the National Weather Service under the Trump administration failed the people of Texas. Take a look.
Maria, we're also learning that there were significant staffing shortfalls of the National Weather Service's offices in the region.
You know, George, as of right now, the local county officials really didn't want to address that just yet. What they are telling us is they expected between 4 and 6 inches of rain. That is what weather experts told them, the National Weather Service as well. They also knew that in remote locations, they might get anywhere from 8 to 10 inches. But this amount of rain in such a short amount of time, it was very difficult to navigate. And when the Department of Homeland Security Secretary was here just yesterday, she acknowledged this was an issue. She was going to take these concerns to the White House as well and try and see if there was anything they could do to revamp the system. She says the president is committed to it.
Of course, the president is committed to the well-being and safety of Americans and making sure that every early alert system is working. And here's the reality. You heard George Stephanopoulos just a moment ago say that the National Weather Service in Texas was short-staffed, that they didn't have enough people, that the warnings weren't able to go out. And as a result, so many people have died. That's what he's saying. And that's a lie. That is a lie. The Associated Press has a report on this subject this weekend. The Weather Service had extra staffers. The National Weather Service office in New Braunfels which delivers forecasts for Austin, San Antonio, and the surrounding areas, had extra staff on duty during the storm. Where the office would typically have had 2 forecasters on duty during clear weather, they had up to 5 on staff. There were extra people in here that night, and that's typical in every weather service office. You staff up for an event, and you bring people in on overtime, and you hold people over. In other words, Stephanopoulos, who's already had to settle a lawsuit for defaming President Trump, is up to his old tricks again. The old Clinton staffer is doing it again. The Democrat political operative is doing it again. He's lying in an effort to stand on the graves of dead children and attack the President of the United States. What a complete disgrace. What a complete disgrace. And the lessons here, by the way, are really clear. I mean, the actual sequence of events here, really clear how everything went down. This whole thing is nuts. You know, Chris Martz is a meteorologist, and he was responding to the lefty claims. You know, lefties have been claiming that, again, President Trump caused the devastation here by not warning people in advance. Chris Martz, meteorologist, says the following on X this weekend. This is bullshit, he says, talking to the left, people like George Stephanopoulos. NOAA's National Weather Service office in Austin and San Antonio issued a flood watch over 12 hours before the flood, and a flash flood warning 3 hours in advance. Find a new job, he told the lefty he's talking to here. Your political analysis skills suck. And he posts the National Weather Service alerts here so you can see the flash flood warnings for the counties, for northwestern Bandera County in south central Texas, for central Kerr County in south central Texas. How long that this warning is going to last, how quickly this thing is coming on. And it's not just Chris Martz, it's lefty meteorologists, people all across the political spectrum who are, in some cases, begrudgingly admitting, yes, the National Weather Service got it right. No, they weren't really at fault at all. Yes, they sent out the early alerts. Yes, they had extra staff working the storm, as is tradition. And no, President Trump or his administration are not to be blamed. But it's not stopping the left. They're still doing it this morning as we speak, trying to politicize all of this. Now, this is the same party that when they ran emergency response, when they ran FEMA, guess what they did? Well, they didn't go to the homes of people who had Trump signs outside. They actively skipped homes of Trump supporters during needed emergency relief in the Southeast United States. That's what really happened. Or when a train carrying toxic chemicals derails in East Palestine, Ohio, the Biden administration can barely be bothered to even mention the place. And eventually they send one of their most pathetic cabinet secretaries to go visit the scene wearing a freshly purchased helmet and vest, Pete Buttigieg, so that they can merely pretend like they had some sort of intense interest in an area that very clearly voted for President Trump and will probably vote for people like President Trump for the rest of our lives. They weren't that interested in responding there. Meanwhile, the president declared an emergency, a disaster immediately for the people of Texas. DHS has been actively involved in assisting the people of Texas, and those efforts continue this morning. They really do. I'm glad you're here with me. We really do have the best damn audience in media. I appreciate our conversations. You guys are very good. And I've got a big radio show coming up today, 12 to 3 Eastern time. You can listen to that. Find it on thevinceshow.com. You can listen there. You just go where to listen for your radio station, or come here at rumble.com/Vince, and you can watch me do this program live. Thanks as always for being with me today. All right. Hey, fellas, who's up next on Rumble here for me? Say that again? Oh, the Rubin Report. Next, right here on Rumble.